In this Blender 3.2 tutorial, we're going to take a look at the new pen feature that's been introduced to help in the creation of Bezier curves. Bezier curves are a great way of starting objects. You can see here the coffee cups are the object that we're going to create. So I'm going to turn this into two parts. One is just the creation of the Bezier curves using the new pen tool methodology. And then we're going to actually model the three-dimensional form for people who are kind of new to modeling and want to see how the process goes. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to jump in here and we're going to create the curve. And I'm going to show you at least partially what the old methodology is to create this. And for reference, you can see I've got the profile of the coffee mug right there. So let's come over here to the add menu and we're going to come to curves. Now I should say you want to have the extra curve objects enabled in the add-ons in case you don't see this. I'm going to start with a point. It's going to automatically drop me into edit mode. We want to be in 3D, Bezier, and vector. Those are the three objects that we want. I'm going to close that down. If you didn't watch my first tutorial on Bezier curves, what we do when you start off with the Bezier curve, in this case just the point, is you tap the E key to start a new segment. In this particular case, I want it to go exactly along the X direction. I'm going to put it right about there. And then you tap the E key again to create another segment. And I'm going to put that segment right there. Now let's talk about this for a minute because this is important for understanding how the new functionality works. I've clicked to plot that point, and then I'm going to press that E key to create one more. But what's happening is each time you press that E key, it's simply duplicating the current point and its configuration to the next point. So if I want to make this more curvy, what I need to do is look at my drag method. In this case, I am select box, so I can select around that. So you require one click to activate it, and then you can operate on it. So in this particular case, I'm going to press the V key, and I'm going to change the handle type to automatic to give myself curvature. So here again, I'm going to activate the point here, and then in this case, I'm going to click yet again to activate that point, and then I can click a third time to move the handles. So that's basically what happens with the original methodology is you've got a lot of clicks that you're doing in order to grab things. You're activating it, and then you're moving it in order to create your curve. So let me just show you up here one final thing where this can be just sort of a pain to deal with. If I zoom down here to the top, we have this point that has these big, long, disjointed handles. And if I want to create the lip that comes around this way, I'm going to press the E key again, and it's just simply duplicating that. And it means you've got a lot of work to do here. So that's the point that I want to show you is with the original method, it's a lot of clicks. So I'm going to tab out, press the X key, and then I'm going to delete. So let's come in now and use the new methodology. We're going to start out by coming down to curve, and then we're going to create the same point starting object. Come down to the curve pen tool. We're in edit mode automatically, which you can see right there. So the first thing we do is come over, and I'm going to place my first point right here by click, holding, and dragging. So it creates the point and the handles, and you can adjust the handles. So this is very Adobe-like. What I want to do is while I'm continuing to hold the mouse button down, I'm going to hold the Shift key and I'm going to break that into a corner angle. So release the mouse and then release the Shift key. The next thing I'm going to do is come up here to the top and I'm going to create a single point up there. And then I'm going to show you the next cool thing that they've introduced into this feature is the ability to create a point at any position. In the previous implementation, you had to select a segment such as that, and then you had to come over and click subdivide to put a point in there, and it goes kind of in the middle. Then you have to move it where you want it to go. With the pen tool, you can simply hover over the location where you want a point to go, hold either the control key or the command key, which is max specific, and then you can just create a point at that location. But the great thing now is that since the mouse is right there, I can click, hold, and drag to reposition that. So it didn't require one click for selection and a second click to operate. One operation. So I'm going to come down here and I can click, hold, and drag on that point to select it. So if you're used to Adobe editing, it's very Adobe-like, but there are some advantages to it. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to come to the top right here, and I want to activate this in order to tell the program that we're now going to add a new segment over here. Click, hold, and drag. I'm going to click down here to add the next segment. So we're creating the lip around here. If I select this, you can see we've got that large handle right here, but there's a really neat function that will improve this. I've got this angle and I want to maintain that angle. If I just simply click, hold, and drag and I move this down, well, I can probably do a fairly satisfactory point, but as I get closer down here, I'm changing a lot the curvature down here, and I'd really like that to be exactly the way it is. Click, hold, and drag on the handle that you want to move. Begin moving it just slightly, and then hold the Option key down. And notice what happens is it locks that handle to the angle that it's on right now, so you don't get any unintended movement on the opposite handle. So it takes a little bit of practice, and I'm going to undo, and I want to show you that again. So I'm going to come up here, click, hold, and drag just very, very slightly, just so that you can see the handle color change. And as soon as that changes, hold the Option key down, and then it will lock that in to that angle. Okay. Now it's a little bit confusing because this red color here sometimes indicates that it's an independent handle, meaning it's a corner point. But you can see now when I select the point, they both become that pink, which means that they are locked together. Okay, so if I press the V key, that means they're in the aligned mode. But when you're moving one handle, it temporarily changes the other handle into red. I think it's confusing, but that's how they've engineered it. Okay, I'm going to come back up here and select this point to activate it. It's on the end, so it's going to know that we're going to create a new point here. Click, hold, and drag, and then I'm going to click, hold, and drag final one time right there. So it's much more Adobe-like. Now when I want to come in here and make an adjustment, click, hold, and drag, one operation activates it and moves it. Click, hold, and drag to move that. Click, hold, and drag. So you see it's nice. Now if I want to come over here, now be careful if you try and add a new point to the end of an existing handle, it'll delete it. So let me give you an example. If I try and add a point right here and I hold the Command or the Control key down, you see it actually will delete the segment. Okay, so you got to be a little bit careful of that. So I'm going to hold the Command key right there, add that point, and then I can just move this over, click, hold, and drag. So these adjustment operations require fewer clicks. It's nice. It's really kind of nice. One thing to note is that while I can hold the Shift key and I can add multiple items to a selection. So now I can come over here and I can click to move both of those at the same time. But when you try and move, or when you do move, there are no constraints. So just be aware of that. If you're wanting to move something with a constraint, then you can switch over and use the older methodology, meaning just select the Move tool and you get a widget whereby you can move it just left to right or up and down. Or if you're in the Move tool, you can activate Move by pressing the G key like this, and then if I press the X key, then I can constrain it. So you're going to end up using a mixture of the old methodology and the new methodology. The old is still completely here, so if you're used to doing that, you can do everything the old way. So I'm going to come down here to the bottom, and I want to take this point and move it up so it's exactly at 0 along the Z-axis. So let's press the N key to bring up our controls here. I'm going to come up to Item, and I want to 0 that out on the Z, so I'm going to press 0 to get that exactly aligned to the original point. So here I'm going to come in again. I'm going to hold the Command or Control key if you're on the PC. Click once, click twice, and then I'm going to hold the Shift key to add the original point to the selection. And in this case, I'm just going to press the G key, and I'm going to move it only along the Z direction by pressing the Z key. Let's come down here, and I'd like to change this into more of a curve. So I'm going to hover right about here, press the Control or Command key, click to activate that, and then right here, what I'm going to do is press that G key again, and then X to move only along the X direction. Now let me show you this. I've got these two handles which are red, which means they are independent of each other, and I'd like to get them into alignment mode. And I want this one here to align to this one. The way you do that is by first selecting the handle that's in the alignment that you want to maintain, press the V key, and set that one to align mode. And then come to the second one, select it, press the V key, and set it to alignment mode, and it will drop down to match the original one. So this is looking very much like I want it to be. Let's say that we wanted to continue the curve over here. So I'm going to activate it and then click the new point where I want the new segment to be. But let's say that you've got that point right there and you really think it should be in a different place. I'm still holding the mouse down, and now I'm going to add the space bar to it, and I can move this point. So this is actually a standard editing function in Adobe Illustrator, and it's nice that we have it right here. So I'm going to release the space bar, and then I'm going to click another point right here. Now here, if I hold the Control key down, I can control the handle of the previous point. Now it is going to break it into a corner point, but this is actually pretty useful if you're wanting to form that curve by breaking that point in order to form the kind of curvature that you want. I'm going to release the Control key, and then I can continue forming this handle, and I can release it. This profile for our coffee mug is a good example of what this new pen curve tool does to sort of speed up and refine the process. So in the next segment, what we're going to do is we're going to draw a curve for the handle, and I'm going to show you another couple of things that we can do. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to press the Tab key to leave edit mode. I'm going to have us delete this. This was sort of there to show us what it was that we were generally forming as a template, if you want to think about it that way. I'm also going to remove this. This square was there just sort of as a reference to help me know how large to draw. So I'm going to press the X key to remove that. And we're going to create a profile for the handle. I'd like, with the cursor tool, to position where I'd like the start of the next curve to be, right about there. And then we're going to come up and we're going to add a new point right there. Now, it's gone by default down to the curve pen tool. So go ahead and select it if it hasn't done that for you. And we're going to click, hold, and drag. Click, hold, and drag. Click, hold, and drag. And then one final sort of right down there. It's rough formation, but now all we need to do is just come over here, click, hold, and drag. Click, hold, and drag to start doing formation. Like this, okay? Now let me show you something. So let's say I've got my curve kind of about like that. I'm going to press Option A to deselect. And there's a neat ability to simply come in and click with the pen tool, curve pen tool, on a curve and adjust it by adjusting the curve itself. You can see down here it's moving this quite a bit, and that's because it's got a very short handle. So let's move down like that. This incoming handle is quite short, so I'm going to click, hold, and drag and elongate that out. And then I can come in and I can just refine this. So click, hold, and drag. All of these operations are nice because it's not requiring these multiple clicks. Okay, there we go. That's my handle curve. I think that's going to work pretty well. So in the next segment, what we're going to do is we're going to turn all of this into three-dimensional forms, and we're going to merge the handle into the body. Okay, so let's come in now. I'm going to press the Tab key to leave edit mode. And in the outliner, I'm going to remove a couple of development items that I had right there. and I'm going to name these. So I'm going to call this mug, and I'm going to call this handle. First thing that we're going to operate on is the mug. We need to create a three-dimensional object. So I'm going to come over to the modifier, add modifier, and then we're going to add a screw to it. So this creates a lathe type of object. And by default, it does pretty much what we want it to do. It's by default come over and created a lathe around the z-axis. Okay, so we're going to come back to that in just a minute, but we also want to come in and create a three-dimensional object for the handle. So we're going to come down to the object data properties for the curve down here, and we want to come down to where it says bevel in geometry, and we're going to change this to just, let's see what 0.25 looks like. In fact, maybe just, let's do 0.4, maybe a little bit thicker, I think works well. I'm going to press the tab key to come back into edit mode. Let's form this. In fact, I'm going to switch over here. I want to look at this in wireframe view. I guess I'm old school. I like to see the polygons. And I want to just make this not quite so plain. So we're going to switch over here to the radius function, and you can select individual handles and you can make this thicker. So if we want a handle that's just a little bit thicker there, and maybe this is just a little bit thinner, you can play artistically with this to kind of design something that you want, or you could do it exactly the opposite. Just play with it until you get artistically what it is that you want. I think I'm going to make mine a little bit thicker. Okay, now the cool thing is we can still come back to that pen tool. You can still continue to operate on that if you want your handle, once you see the geometry, to be adjusted a little bit. And I think that works for me. Okay, now I want to come in and adjust the resolution because we're actually getting ready to merge these two together, and they are going to end up as a subdivision surface object. So I need to make some adjustments to the resolution. What I'm going to do first off is I'm going to press the tab key to leave edit mode for the handle, and I'm going to come back to the mug. We have a little bit too much resolution in one direction and not quite enough in the other. So the first thing I'm going to do is scroll so that I get to the top here, and I'm going to change the resolution here, and I'm going to make that 6, and we can just sort of look how that adjusts. The resolution of the curve is it's translated into a three-dimensional object. We can make changes to that if we need to, but for right now I think 6 will probably work. And then we need to come to the little wrench icon right here, and we need to change the steps for this, and I'm going to increase this to 32. I'm going to double that up. And so I've just basically attempted to create square-ish polygons. And then I'm going to come back over here to this object. Let's come back over. In fact, I'm going to look at this in the front view here. Let's adjust its resolution. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this down to 6. And then in geometry, down here under the bevel where we're working, we're going to take this resolution and we're going to take that down to 2. With subdivision surfaces, you actually don't necessarily want more data than you really need to define the curvature. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I want to come in and we're going to merge this here into this here. And I think I need to adjust the resolution of this object just a little bit, so that this center line is a little bit more close. So we could do this in a couple of ways. I'm going to press the tab key, and let's come back over into a mode where I can kind of see the profile. And I'm going to click right here with the command key. Now I'm in the pen curve tool. I'm going to click here with the command key to add one more segment. So let's come in. This is a little bit hard to see with all of the geometry going on. But you see by adding that extra segment right there, it got this loop pretty close enough to this loop right here. Okay, let's come down to the bottom. Let's just sort of look at this right here. I think what I can do down here in the bottom is not worry too much about trying to add points and control it at the Bezier level. We can adjust this at the polygon level. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to press the Tab key with the mug selected, bring up the context menu by right-clicking, and we're going to come down and convert this explicitly now to a polygon mesh. So I would suggest that if you're going to want to maintain that curve, that you're going to want to maintain a duplicate of that just in case you're going to need to come back. We're going to do the same thing here for the handle. We're going to convert this specifically to a mesh. Okay, it's now time to merge the two together. So I'm going to hold the Shift key and I'm going to add that to the selection so both are selected, bring up the context menu, and we're going to join them into a single object. Okay, so now we're ready to get these so that they're merged together from a modeling standpoint into a single mesh where there's a smooth flowing curve between both objects. Okay, so let's come in now. Let's work on the top. I actually have a segment. I'm going to press the Tab key and I'm going to switch over into face mode. I have a little too much geometry right here, so I'm just going to double click on one of the edges to do an edge loop, press the X key, and we want to delete those faces. Then when we scroll around here, we've got, now I'm going to switch over. I want to make sure that I'm in circle selection mode. This is going to be the easiest for what we're about to do. I'm going to click, hold, and drag those two, and then I'm going to click here with the Shift key still held down, and I'm going to select those, so I have those 4 polygons. But we've got a total of 8 polygons around that we need to match up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the context menu and we're going to use this function called poke faces. This is pretty cool. It's just going to essentially triangulate those faces like that. Click here, hold the Shift key, and just drag to select, holding the Shift key to select those there. Bring up the context menu or just press the X key. That's a little bit easier to delete those. I want to form the shape. So we're going to switch over into vertex mode right here. And I'm going to select this. Now I want to maintain the existing vector along this edge right here. So we have a function, if we slide down here, called edge slide. But if you hold your mouse down on here, we actually have a vertex slide also. And that's what I want to do. I want to click, hold, and drag to move that along that edge. But we're going to have to do that 4 times, and we have symmetry from left to right. So we can actually turn our symmetry on up here. And watch what happens now when I do it. It does it on either side like that. So I can click this to activate it. Click, hold, and drag to pull that down. So I'm just generally mirroring that round shape that we want. Okay, so I'm going to turn that off right now, just so I don't do anything that I didn't intend to do. I'm going to, in edge mode, I've just switched to edge mode. I'm going to double click this, hold the Shift key, and I'm going to double click that right there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over here into the front view, and we're going to press the content, we're going to bring up the context menu. We're going to bridge edge loops. So by default, it's going to do a really basic operation. And I'm going to expand our functions down here. And what I want to do is I want to increase the number of cuts to 1, tab, and the smoothness I want to be 0.5, but it's still not doing quite what I want. So we're going to come over here and we're going to switch to blend surface. This mode just works better. It works really well to blend surfaces like that, but you really want that smoothness to be that 0.5. That's sort of an average position. If I set this to 0, you can see it gives us no blending, but if I set it to 1, it gives us a little bit too much. So that 0.5 is just a really good value in between. And we don't need too much geometry. That's why I'm not coming in here and I'm not putting more cuts, because it looks like we're producing a nicer blend. Maybe 2 isn't too bad, but we're using subdivision surfaces in a localized area and you don't necessarily need too much geometry. So I'm going to take that back to 1. That's going to work pretty well. Let me rotate this so we can see it. That's a really good bridge right there. So let's come down to the bottom. I'm going to click to deselect. And let's come back to the front. Now we have a situation here where we've got some overlapping geometry and this doesn't match up. So let's do a little bit of reforming. I'm going to switch back over into face mode and I'm going to double click this right here. And then I'm going to hold the shift key and I'm going to double select that right there. X key, we're going to remove those. But I'm looking at this line right here and I'd really like to have kind of generally match up to something here. So I'm going to come and sort of topologize that just a little bit in edge mode. So the first thing I'm going to do is select this right here, and we want to switch over to edge slide mode, and I'm going to slide that down. So that becomes my edge that roughly matches up, and this right here, I'm actually just going to dissolve it. We don't want to delete it, we want to dissolve that edge. Okay, so it's still generally maintaining the curvature of that area that I want. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing that we did to the top. I'm going to rotate around and I'm going to find in face mode the 4, I'm holding the shift key now, polygons that match up to the geometry as close as possible. Bring up the context menu. We're going to invoke the poke faces function. Click, hold the shift key, select all of those, X key to delete them. And then we're going to do that same formation. So I'm going to come back up here and just turn symmetry back on. We need to be in vertex mode. So I'm going to grab this. Let's come over here to grab this right here, and we're just going to pull that up. Click. We're going to pull that direction, and that works out pretty well. Okay, edge mode. Double click. Hold the shift key. Double click. I'm going to come back into front, bring up the context menu, bridge edge loops. Number of cuts is 1. Tab key. We're in blend surface. That's what we want. And we're in 0.5, so that's what we want also. Okay, so just click outside of it to activate that. Now there's one little bit more bit of forming that we're going to do right here. So we've got this curvature that's coming down here, and we've got this point right there. So what I'd like to try and do is kind of retopologize this just a little bit. When you're working with subdivision surfaces, you're looking at loops, and we can clearly see that we've got quad loops here, and then we've got this triangle. The subdivision system can handle a triangle in the mix, but you'll generally get your best topology if you're working with quads. So I'm going to press the K key and watch what happens. I can click here to here and then to here and hit return. And then I'm still in edge mode. I'm going to select this, hold the shift key, select this, bring up the context menu. We're going to dissolve those edges. And there we go. We created quads right there. So we have a better flow of polygons coming down like that. So let's come up to the top right here. In edge mode, we're going to remove some of these edges. So let's look at this in the front view right there. They're mostly planar to each other. So I'm going to hold the shift key and double click on these loops. And I'm going to dissolve them. And then we can perform the same operation. K key, click, 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 return. Select this edge, hold the shift key, select this edge, bring up the context menu, dissolve. That is a better translation. Now I'm not doing it over here because I would be adding, the curvature coming down this way is fairly shallow and it's a little bit more of an abrupt change, and I would be adding a point in the middle of this flat area right here. And I don't want to do that. In this case, I'm going to let the subdivision system handle a couple of triangles in this direction. So let's do quickly the same thing down here, and we are about done. K, click, 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 return. K, click, 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 return. Select this, 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 and this. and we'll dissolve those, dissolve edges. Now, we're almost done. What we need to do is check the normals. So I'm going to come back into face mode here, and we're going to switch over into a shaded view. And what I'm really wanting to do now is I want to make sure, in fact, I'm going to press the tab key, and we're going to make sure it's in shade smooth mode. Okay, that's the first thing that's important. You can see it's pretty crude, but I want to come over now up here to the overlays, and I'm going to have us turn on face orientation. And as long as everything is blue, all the polygons are going and they have the same facing direction, and that's what we want. If you saw some red matched with blue, they would be having opposing facing directions. Press the tab key. If that were the case, you could select all by pressing the A key, and under mesh, you would come down to normals and you would say recalculate outside. So it would unify them all in the same direction, going outward facing. Now we're going to come over here. Let's actually turn this off. We don't need this on anymore. Face orientation, we can turn that off. And we just need to assign a subdivision. So we come down to Subdivision Surfaces. There we go. So I'm going to, for display purposes, I'm going to take this up to 2. And I'm going to press the tab key to leave edit mode. We can see our handle really nicely integrated into the cup. You can even see the bottom down there. There you go. So that is exactly how you would form very well-controlled subdivision surface. All of this started out with Bezier curves.